Ethan knew the hour was late, way past his bedtime, yet he was glued to his screen, another digital page turning in a tale of marital betrayal. Could it be real? Could someone truly shatter the vows, the promises whispered at the altar? These stories burrowed into his mind, planting insidious seeds of doubt and unease. He found himself watching Emily, his wife, with a newfound scrutiny, dissecting every glance, every word. At a friend's rooftop party, Ethan's gut clenched every time Emily laughed a little too brightly with another man. He even started doing the unthinkable, sifting through their laundry basket, hunting for phantom stains of infidelity. Ethan had met Emily at her sister Sophia's wedding, never suspecting the whirlwind of drama that Sophia and her new husband Jason seemed to thrive on. From their first clumsy dance, Ethan and Emily had clicked, a spark igniting into a roaring flame. A year later, they were married, their first son, Liam, arriving 2 years after. 4 years after that, their daughter Ava completed their picture-perfect family. From the outside, they were the golden couple, the envy of their Upper West Side circle. But conflicting schedules at their high-powered jobs chipped away at their time together, leaving cracks in their foundation. Adding fuel to the fire were Sophia and Jason, notorious for their wild parties and the whispers that clung to their lifestyle. Ethan had never warmed to Jason, especially after Jason's brazen flirting with Emily at their wedding reception. Early in their relationship, Ethan and Emily had made a pact, a silent agreement to bury their pasts, knowing both harbored a jealous streak. Then came the day Emily asked Ethan to swing by Sophia's brownstone to fix a leaky faucet. "Sure, babe, I'll take care of it," Ethan replied, a sly grin playing on his lips. "Maybe I'll fix a few other things while I'm there." Emily shot him a look that could freeze the Hudson. "Don't even joke about that, Ethan. She's my sister," she said, her voice sharp. Ethan threw up his hands in mock surrender. "Just kidding, Em. Relax." But as he walked toward Sophia's place, thoughts about her scandalous reputation slithered into his mind. Sophia had always been flirtatious, even with him. Still, Ethan knew he shouldn't let paranoia poison his marriage. Or should he? When Ethan arrived at Sophia's, she greeted him in a doorway, draped in nothing but a silk robe that barely contained her. "Come in, Ethan," she purred, her voice low and smoky. "Made coffee, if you want some." Ethan's mouth went dry. Thanks, Sophia. I'll just get to work on that faucet." He tried to inject a casual tone, to dispel the sudden, thick tension in the air. He squeezed himself under the kitchen sink, wrestling with pipes, trying to ignore the awkwardness radiating off Sophia. When he finally stood up, she was right there, inches away, the robe gaping open. "Sophia, what are you doing?" Ethan mumbled, stepping back, a knot of unease tightening in his stomach. "What do you think?" she breathed, moving closer, her eyes glittering with a predatory light. "I've wanted you for so long, Ethan." "Sophia, no, stop this. I'm here to fix the faucet. This isn't right." Her face hardened, the flirtatious mask dropping to reveal something cold and calculating. "So, are you going to sleep with me or not?" she asked, her voice blunt, devoid of any pretense. "No, never. You're Emily's sister, and I love her," Ethan said, his voice firm, despite the tremor of shock running through him. "Fine," Sophia spat, her eyes narrowed. "But if you don't give me what I want, I'll tell Emily you came on to me. Who do you think she'll believe?" Panic seized Ethan. He stumbled out of the brownstone, fumbling for his phone, desperately trying to call Emily, but she didn't pick up. Later that night, back at his Wall Street office, Ethan stared blankly at his computer screen. his thoughts a chaotic jumble. Olivia's threat, the potential nuclear fallout for his marriage, it was all consuming. When he finally dragged himself home the next morning, he was blindsided. Sophia's sleek black SUV was parked brazenly in their driveway. As he pushed open the front door, chaos erupted. Jason was frantically zipping up his pants, his face flushed and guilty. Sophia lounged on their living room couch, a smug smirk plastered across her face. Emily, clearly drunk, sat slumped in an armchair, her eyes wide with terror. "What the hell is going on here?" Ethan roared, his voice raw with disbelief and rage. Without thinking, Ethan lunged at Jason, fists flying, a blind, animalistic fury taking over. In the swirling melee, something hard connected with the back of Ethan's head. Then, darkness. He woke up in a sterile hospital room, a throbbing ache behind his eyes. A uniformed NYPD officer stood beside his bed, explaining in a monotone voice that he had been struck with a heavy vase concussion. The charges against him had been dropped, the officer continued, his tone indifferent. Jason claimed self-defense, said Ethan had stormed in, a drunken rage, and attacked him. Emily, still hazy from the night before, could only vaguely recall shouting and chaos. The situation had spiraled into a grotesque parody of his worst nightmares. "I have nothing to say," Ethan mumbled, his voice hoarse. "You're lucky, Mr. Davis," the officer said, unimpressed. "No charges, but you need to seriously consider your actions." After the officer left, Ethan lay there, head pounding, trying to piece together the shattered fragments of the night. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that he couldn't stay in a marriage with someone who had so readily betrayed him. But he needed answers, a coherent narrative in the wreckage. He called his sister Sarah, asking her to come get him. Just then his phone buzzed. It was Emily. "Do you want me to pick you up?" she asked, her voice tentative. "We need to talk now that we're even." Ethan's anger flared anew. "Even? You slept with Jason?" he barked into the phone. "Sarah's coming to get me. I'll pack my things and leave." "Leave?" Emily cried, her voice cracking. "Ethan, I only did it because you were with Olivia back home." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Olivia said you came on to her?" Emily accused, her voice rising in pitch. "That's a lie, Emily," Ethan shot back, his voice tight with fury. "She came on to me and threatened to lie if I didn't play along. I refused." Emily's face twisted in a mixture of anger and confusion. "Why should I believe you? Why would my own sister lie to me?" "Because she's jealous, Emily," Ethan yelled, his irritation boiling over. "She and Jason, they sleep around, and they wanted to drag you into their sick games. You let Jason get close, and as far as I'm concerned, this marriage is over." "No! I only did it to get back at you," Emily insisted, her voice laced with desperation. "Olivia knew the details of what happened between you two." Ethan's face turned icy, distant. "Your sister is a walking disaster, Emily. I slept with her back in high school, just like half the guys in our graduating class. But that was long before I met you." Emily's eyes welled with tears. "I don't know what to believe anymore." "It's not just about Jason, Emily," Ethan said, his voice cold and detached. "It's about trust. If I had really attacked Olivia, why didn't she go to the police?" His words hung in the air, sharp and accusatory. "She admitted it," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. "You wanted Jason, and I just became the scapegoat." Tears streamed down Emily's face. "No, Ethan, I love you," she sobbed, her body shaking. "Love?" Ethan responded bitterly, his voice hardening. "Love doesn't mean betraying someone with another man. He turned away, his voice flat and final. "I'm filing for divorce on Monday." "It wasn't supposed to be like this," Emily whispered through her tears. But Ethan was already gathering his things, his expression indifferent. Pausing at the door, he added coldly, "Tell the kids whatever you want. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Sarah will handle the visits with Liam and Ava." The days that followed were a blur, a monotonous stream of emotionless routine. Long hours at work, sleepless nights in cheap motels, his new normal as he tried to piece his life back together. He met with a divorce lawyer, the sterile office a stark contrast to the vibrant life he had once known. One afternoon, picking Liam up from school, the boy suddenly fell ill. Ethan drove to their old Upper West Side apartment to grab some things. The phone rang. It was Sophia. At his breaking point, Ethan instinctively turned on the recorder on his phone, unaware of the bombshell that was about to drop. Olivia confessed everything: the fabricated attack story, Jason's orchestration of the scheme. Ethan left with Liam, his heart heavy, but a sliver of resolve hardening within him. Later, checking his phone, a flood of desperate messages from Emily, apologies and pleas for forgiveness. But Ethan's trust was shattered, irrevocably broken. The fact that she had so readily believed the worst about him, discarded their marriage so casually, left him hollowed out. On the day the divorce was finalized, Ethan signed the papers, the finality of it crushing him. The weight of it all drove him to a dimly lit bar in Midtown. And that's when he saw Jason. Months of simmering rage, betrayal, and heartbreak exploded. Noah snapped. He lunged, landing blow after brutal blow, until Jason lay crumpled and bloodied on the sticky bar floor. "Burn in hell, you bastard!" Ethan roared, as 3 bouncers dragged him off Jason, pulling him out onto the street where waiting police slammed him to the pavement and snapped handcuffs on his wrists. This time there were no second chances. Ethan was going to jail. Once in custody, he made one call. "Sarah, it's me. I've really messed up this time," he said quietly into the phone. "Don't waste money on bail. I'll just serve my time." He heard her choked sobs before the line went dead. Prison was a brutal awakening. The first few months were a constant struggle for survival. He got into several fights, ending up in the infirmary twice. His cellmate, Joe, was serving a life sentence. They said he'd killed his unfaithful wife and her lover. Strangely, Joe, a man hardened by years of prison, began to open up to Ethan, sharing stories of his life spiraling out of control. One day during visiting hours, Ethan was stunned to see Emily standing before him, her face pale and drawn. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice devoid of emotion. "Ethan, I love you," Emily said, her voice trembling. She slid photos of Liam and Ava across the table. "I've made so many mistakes, Ethan, but I'll wait for you. We can still get through this, if you love me too." Ethan didn't respond. He stood up abruptly and walked away, leaving Emily sobbing behind the visitor's glass. Later that evening, Ethan overheard inmates plotting to harm Joe. Despite his fear of being labeled a snitch, Ethan felt a strange sense of obligation. He warned Joe. Joe listened suspiciously, but heeded the warning. The next day Joe avoided the attack. He had hidden books under his clothes, softening the blow of a makeshift weapon. Joe's crew retaliated swiftly, beating the attacker until guards intervened. Amidst the chaos, Joe remained calm, eating his lunch as if nothing had happened. An unexpected bond formed between Joe and Ethan. In the stark privacy of their cell, Joe began to open up, asking about Emily and the kids. He spoke with a quiet longing about his own children, who rarely visited except for his daughter, Vicky.
She knows it was her mother who destroyed our family,
Joe admitted, a flicker of pain in his eyes.
She writes to me every week, but I refuse to let her come here. This place isn't safe.
His face lit up with pride when he mentioned Vicky's growing success in law school. In turn, Ethan began to share his own story, Olivia's betrayal, his inner turmoil about Emily.
"Do you still love her?"
Joe asked bluntly, his gaze piercing.
Ethan sighed heavily. "Yes, I do. But I can't forgive what she did to our family." "And does she love you?" Joe pressed. "She says she does, but I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust her again."
Joe's face hardened.
"Why not? Look where you are right now, kid. You've hit rock bottom. If a woman was willing to stick with me in a place like this, I'd consider myself the luckiest guy in the world." "What about the lies, the cheating?" Ethan countered. Joe chuckled bitterly. "Man, you lost everything for the same reason I did. Trust. Trust me, kid. If you hold on to that anger, it'll destroy you. Don't let it burn you up inside."
Joe's words echoed in Ethan's mind, forcing him to confront his own feelings. What would he do when he got out? No job, no future, no family. The thought paralyzed him. 2 months later, Emily visited again.
"The kids miss you so much," she whispered, her voice pleading. "Can't we be a family again? I'll do whatever it takes."
Ethan hesitated, the familiar ache of longing warring with the icy wall of resentment he had built around his heart.
"I want to forgive you, Emily,
but every time I close my eyes, I see you with Jason." "I hated every second of it," Emily said, her voice shaking. "When I saw your face that night, the guilt was unbearable. I wish I could take it all back." Ethan felt his resolve wavering, but a few weeks later, Sarah came with alarming news.
"I drove past the old place yesterday," she said quietly, her voice tight with concern. "Jason and Olivia's cars were parked outside."
Ethan's thoughts raced, a whirlwind of confusion and rage. Could it be? Had Emily been lying to him all along? Meanwhile, Joe, a surprisingly astute legal mind, offered his help in preparing for Ethan's upcoming parole hearing. Though uncertain, Ethan respected Joe's pragmatic approach and decided to trust him. On the day of the hearing, the parole board grilled Ethan, questions sharp and probing, about his behavior in prison, his plans for the future, housing, work. Ethan answered with stark honesty, explaining that Sarah had offered him a place to stay and that his former boss might take him back. One board member leaned forward, his gaze unwavering.
"What are the chances you'll end up back here, Mr. Davis?"
With newfound determination, Ethan replied, "I don't plan on ever seeing these walls again." After the hearing, back in his cell, Joe was waiting, his eyes narrowed with curiosity.
"How'd it go, kid?"
Ethan shrugged, unsure.
"I followed your advice. Did you do anything to expedite the process?"
Ethan asked, a hint of suspicion in his voice. Joe smirked.
"Who knows, kid?"
he replied cryptically, then added with a grin.
"But if you get out early, I expect you to pay me back for those weekly smokes."
A few days later, Emily came to visit, her face etched with worry.
"Someone from the parole board came," she said anxiously. "Are you getting out soon? What did they ask?"
Ethan immediately pressed her.
"What did you tell them, Emily?" he demanded, his voice sharp.
"They wanted to know if you'd be living with me after your release," she explained, her voice barely a whisper. "I told them, we're not together anymore, but I'd still let you stay."
Ethan's face hardened. "You swore you'd stopped seeing Olivia, Emily. Was that the truth? Emily shifted uncomfortably, avoiding his gaze. She's my sister, Ethan. I don't see her often, but... What about Jason? Ethan interrupted, his voice rising. Have you seen him recently? Why are you asking me this? She replied, surprised, her eyes widening. Because I don't believe a word you say anymore, Emily. Ethan said, his voice cold, cutting through the air like ice. You promised it was over between you and Olivia, but both she and Jason have been to your place. Is that why you're so nervous about my release? Did something happen between you and Jason? No, it's not what you think, Emily objected, her voice laced with panic. I can explain. Don't even try, Ethan interrupted coldly. Tell your boyfriend that when I get out, I'll finish what I started that night at the bar. And if you're lying to me again, Emily, I'll deal with you too. Emily ran out, sobbing, leaving Ethan's worst fears confirmed. He was being dragged back into the same toxic chaos that had landed him in prison. He didn't really want to kill anyone, but he was determined to make them afraid. That night he called Sarah, asking her to come as soon as possible. When she arrived the next day, Ethan laid it all out, the latest confrontation with Emily, his gnawing suspicion, the overwhelming sense of being trapped in a nightmare loop. Sarah sighed deeply. Oh, Ethan, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize things were still this bad between you two. Ethan nodded grimly. I need to know the truth, Sarah. Can you watch the apartment? Let me know who comes and goes. Of course, Ethan. Sarah reassured him, her voice calm but unwavering support. I'll do whatever I can to help you. She paused before leaving, then added, Oh, by the way, the parole board contacted me too. They asked if you could stay with us if you were released early. Ethan looked at her, a flicker of hope igniting within him. And what did you tell them? Sarah's smile widened, a warm, genuine smile that reached her eyes. I told them, without hesitation, that you would always be welcome here, Ethan. Bill agrees with me. A wave of relief washed over Ethan, loosening the knot of anxiety that had been constricting his chest for months. Thank you, Sarah. I really don't know what I'd do without you. Oh, one more thing, she continued, her smile widening further. They reached out to Mr. Parker about your old job. Seriously? Ethan asked, disbelief coloring his voice. And what did he say? Tracy's smile widened even more. He said you could always come back. In fact, he called you one of his best employees. For the first time in a long time, Ethan felt a genuine glimmer of hope. I appreciate everything you're doing, Sarah. I just hope they don't reject me. They won't, Ethan, she said confidently. With a job and a place to stay, they said there's a good chance you'll be released next month. Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes as he hugged his sister, a wave of gratitude washing over him. And as Sarah had predicted, Ethan got the call a week later. His release was set for the following week. Strangely, instead of meeting with the parole officer, Ethan was asked to meet with a lawyer. It turned out a well-known law firm had become involved in his early release. As he packed his meager belongings, Ethan thanked Joe, promising to keep sending him cigarettes, though he wasn't sure if the old man had anything to do with the legal intervention, but it felt right. When Ethan finally stepped through the prison gates, Sarah was there, tears streaming down her face. They embraced for a long time before heading to her Brooklyn brownstone, where Bill greeted him with a warm hug and genuine welcome. Once settled in the living room, Sarah broke the silence. So, what are your plans now, Ethan? Ethan took a deep breath, the fresh air filling his lungs for the first time in months. I think I need to call Emily. I want to arrange a meeting with the kids. I promise I won't cause any trouble. When Ethan contacted Emily, she agreed to the meeting, but her voice was laced with caution. At the slightest hint of trouble, Ethan, I will call the police. Ethan assured her that all he wanted was to see Liam and Ava. The reunion with his children was overwhelming. Liam and Ava ran into his arms, shouting, "Daddy! Daddy, you're home!" He held them tightly, astonished at how much they had grown in his absence. Later, as he and Emily sat together on her stoop, the tension between them was palpable, a thick, unspoken history hanging heavy in the air. "What do you want from me, Ethan?" she asked cautiously, her eyes wary. "We're not together anymore. I'm trying to move on." "They're my children too, Emily," Ethan said firmly, his voice low but resolute. "I want to be a part of their lives. I was willing to forgive you, Emily," he said, his voice laced with frustration. "But you lied to me again. You're still seeing Jason and Olivia." Her eyes flashed with anger. "Ethan, you were in prison. I was alone." "Don't bother, Emily," Ethan replied harshly, cutting her off. "I know what's going on between you. I don't care who you're with now, but if you expose my kids to that toxic lifestyle, I'll fight for them." Ethan watched her, barely concealing his irritation as she began speaking, her voice trembling. "Ethan, I would never do anything to hurt our children." "Really, Emily?" Ethan snapped, his words dripping with bitterness. "You've already torn our family apart because of Jason. I just want to make sure my kids stay away from people like him. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with a lawyer to find out what rights I have as their father," Ethan added firmly, his voice leaving no room for argument. Emily's face darkened, a storm brewing behind her eyes. "Please, Ethan, you've misunderstood everything," she pleaded, her voice rising in desperation. But Ethan was already leaving, his back turned to her, his focus solely on rebuilding his life, protecting his children. The next day, Ethan walked into the law firm that had secured his release. Approaching the reception desk, he told the secretary, "I have an appointment with Miss Evans." The secretary gave him a warm, professional smile. "Miss Evans will see you shortly, Mr. Davis." Ethan couldn't hide his confusion. The business card clearly said AJ, but in a moment his curiosity morphed into surprise as a woman in a sharp blue suit approached him, her presence radiating confidence and competence. "Mr. Davis, I'm Miss Evans," she said, offering a firm handshake. "Please, follow me to my office, and we'll discuss your case." Ethan followed her, still slightly bewildered. When they sat down, AJ maintained a calm, professional demeanor. "A mutual acquaintance suggested I take another look at your case. There were some key points your previous attorney missed." Ethan frowned, intrigued. "But why did you take my case, Miss Evans? And who recommended you?" A soft, almost hesitant smile appeared on AJ's face. "My father, Ethan, thought I could help you. You might know him by another name. Joe." Ethan's eyes widened in shock. "Wait, you're Vicky? Joe's favorite daughter?" She nodded, smiling slightly. "Victoria Evans, at your service. But you can call me AJ." She paused, then added, "Now let's continue this over lunch." In a quiet restaurant downtown, AJ explained the terms of Ethan's parole, the legal steps he needed to take. But Ethan, captivated by her presence, couldn't resist shifting the conversation into more personal territory. "Tell me more about yourself, AJ," Ethan said, his curiosity evident. AJ smiled knowingly but shook her head gently. "Ethan, discussing my personal life with a client would be inappropriate." But Ethan, undeterred, blurted out, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. "You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." And those dimples when you smile. A faint blush crept up AJ's cheeks. Ethan, I don't date clients, but thank you for the kind words. Now let's stay focused on your case. Undeterred, Ethan persisted. Okay, but as your client, can I at least know a little about your professional background? AJ chuckled softly, relenting. All right, fine. I earned a full scholarship to law school and have specialized in criminal law ever since. As lunch drew to a close, Ethan couldn't help but feel increasingly drawn to AJ, or Victoria as he now knew her. Will we be seeing each other again soon? He asked as they were about to part ways, a hopeful note in his voice. We'll meet next week to finalize some documents for your parole, Ethan, AJ replied, her tone professional but a hint of warmth in her eyes. And we can have lunch again if you'd like. Next time, it's on me. Ethan couldn't suppress a smile. That works for me. Remember, Ethan, this is strictly for work, Victoria said, a hint of authority in her voice, though the slight smile playing on her lips suggested otherwise. Back in her office, as they said goodbye, Victoria held Ethan's hand just a fraction longer than strictly professional. He silently hoped she didn't see him as just an awkward ex-con. Before leaving, he made sure to tell her, I'm really looking forward to our next meeting, Victoria. As he stepped out, Victoria's assistant gave him a knowing smile. Ethan quickly realized that Victoria was unlike most lawyers he had ever met. Over the next 2 meetings, everything went strictly according to plan. Victoria remained purely professional, yet Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something more was quietly developing between them, a subtle undercurrent of attraction. 2 weeks later, Victoria informed him that their professional relationship was officially over. So, you're not my lawyer anymore? He asked, a hint of playful disappointment in his voice. I still am, Ethan. You can always reach out to me if you need, she reassured him, her eyes twinkling. In that case, Victoria, Ethan smiled seriously, consider yourself fired. After everything I've done for you, and I didn't take a single cent? She responded, surprised, a playful challenge in her tone. Ethan nodded confidently. Exactly. You don't date clients, and I want to ask you out on a real date. Dinner, dancing, the whole thing. I know I'm just a working man with a past, but I want to get to know you better, Victoria, and something tells me you feel the same way. Ethan, Victoria hesitated, her gaze softening. I do have feelings for you, but what will people think? Forget what other people think, Victoria. Just trust your heart for once, Ethan said softly, his eyes meeting hers. Victoria took a deep breath, a flicker of something akin to surrender in her expression. I know it's not sensible, Ethan, but fine, 1 date. But don't get any ideas about it becoming more, she warned, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. That weekend, Ethan borrowed Sarah's car and drove to pick Victoria up. She looked stunning, elegant in a classic black dress. Over glasses of wine and a refined dinner at a cozy Italian spot in the village, Ethan asked her about her past. My parents divorced when I was 15. She began quietly, her voice tinged with sadness. My father has been in prison for 15 years. My siblings and I bounced around between relatives. They still can't forgive him for what he did. I was the one who told him about my mom's affair. Sometimes, Ethan, I wonder if things would have been different if I had kept quiet, she said, her voice trailing off, lost in memory. You did what you thought was right at the time, Victoria, Ethan assured her gently, reaching across the table to take her hand. Your father's decisions are his responsibility. Victoria nodded, her eyes glistening as she fought back tears. After he was sentenced, I became obsessed with the idea of becoming a lawyer, hoping I could somehow lessen his punishment. That's why I went into criminal law. But in the end, there wasn't much I could do. She paused, a faint trace of pride in her voice. He used to be a brilliant lawyer himself. He always said he was proud of me for following in his footsteps, even if I couldn't help him. Were you ever married? Or is that off limits too? Ethan asked playfully, trying to lighten the heavy mood. Victoria chuckled softly, a genuine, warm sound. A bit of both. It didn't last long, Ethan, and that's all you need to know, she teased, her eyes sparkling. Let's set aside the heavy topics. I'm having a great time. How about we dance? Ethan laughed, a self-deprecating chuckle. I'm a terrible dancer, Victoria. 2 left feet, remember? But he took her hand anyway, leading her to the small dance floor. Noah cherished every opportunity to hold her closer, moving slowly to the rhythm of the soft music. He breathed in the familiar scent of Victoria's hair, a comforting, grounding scent. Gathering his courage, he gently kissed the top of her head. I don't go on dates often, Ethan, Victoria confessed, her voice barely audible, her breath warm against his ear. My past experiences with men have made me cautious. Honestly, if it wasn't for your father pushing you toward me, I'm not sure I'd be here today. Ethan chuckled softly. I guess I owe him another pack of his favorites, cigars, for that. His voice softened as he continued, his gaze locking with hers. Victoria, meeting you is the best thing that's happened to me in a long time. I'm ready to earn your trust. If I ever cross a line, just let me know. Later that night, standing on her doorstep in the cool city air, their kiss made Victoria look at Ethan with surprise, a spark of something deeper igniting in her eyes. She leaned in for another. Can I come in? He asked, his voice husky. Not tonight, Ethan, she gently replied, shaking her head, a soft smile playing on her lips. It's still too soon, but call me on Wednesday and we'll talk about next Saturday. As he left, walking through the quiet city streets, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he was the luckiest man alive. Over the next 2 weekends, they continued to see each other, their connection deepening with each date, each shared laugh. Gradually, Victoria began to open up more, sharing pieces of herself, layer by layer. One evening, she decided to share an important part of her life, a vulnerability she had kept carefully guarded. Ethan, if we're going to keep seeing each other, there's something you need to know about my past, she began, her voice steady but serious. I got married while I was still in college. It was a rushed decision because I was pregnant. We were too young, and after I lost the baby, our marriage fell apart. I kept the last name Evans to distance myself from my father's name, Miller. Ethan listened intently, his heart aching for her pain. Then, a spontaneous idea sparked in his mind. How about coming to our family barbecue next Saturday, Victoria? You could meet my sister and her kids. Victoria hesitated, aware of the significance of the invitation, the step it represented in their burgeoning relationship. After a brief pause, she leaned in and kissed Ethan, a kiss filled with a newfound passion and intensity. All right, Ethan, she said, her voice soft, a genuine smile lighting up her face. I'd love to come. What should I bring? While Ethan spent weekends with Victoria, a new lightness entering his life, he continued to see Liam and Ava regularly. During one of their visits, the children mentioned their mother, Emily, and her new boyfriend, Rick, a teacher at their school. At first, Ethan felt a familiar pang of unease, but when Ava said she liked Rick, his worries eased slightly. Out of cautious curiosity, Ethan later asked Emily about her relationship with Rick. I'm really trying to make things right, Ethan, Emily explained, her voice softer than he had heard it in months. Rick is a good man. He knows about you, Ethan, and respects your role as their father. Ethan nodded, his tone firm but calm. Emily, the lies you told me, they broke us. If this man matters to you, be honest with him. Don't make the same mistakes, Emily. You've already destroyed 13 years of our marriage, our family. Over time, Ethan moved into a modest apartment in the West Village, just a mile away from Emily and the kids. It had 2 bedrooms, just enough space for Liam and Ava to stay with him on weekends. He still often joined Sarah and Bill for family dinners, finding solace and normalcy in their unwavering support. One crisp morning, while making toast in his small kitchen, Ethan turned to Victoria, his heart pounding a hopeful rhythm against his ribs.
Victoria,
he began, his voice slightly trembling. Will you marry me? Her eyes filled with tears, a mixture of joy and something deeper, something almost painful. What's wrong? Ethan asked, concern clouding his features. I'm just thinking about my father, Ethan, Victoria said softly, her voice barely a whisper. He won't be able to walk me down the aisle. A week later, when Victoria came to visit Ethan at his office, he immediately noticed the telltale traces of tears on her face. His smile faded, replaced by a wave of concern. What happened, Victoria? He asked, his voice filled with worry, his hand reaching out to touch her arm. I called the prison, she whispered, her voice barely audible, choked with emotion. My father won't be able to come to the wedding. A life sentence guaranteed that stark reality. Ethan pulled Victoria into a comforting embrace as tears streamed down her cheeks. I wish I could change that, Victoria, but it's beyond my control, he added quietly, his heart aching for her. Victoria's father was battling a recurrence of cancer, the doctor's prognosis grim, giving him only a few months to live. Ethan felt utterly helpless, wondering why life could be so cruel to someone as kind, as deserving of happiness, as Victoria. Victoria, Ethan admitted softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I sent cigarettes to your father. Joe. It was part of the deal we made. She met his gaze, her eyes filled with understanding, not judgment. I know, Ethan. He trades them for things he needs. It's not your fault, she reassured him gently, her hand squeezing his. An idea began to form in Ethan's mind, a risky, audacious idea, but he said nothing, not wanting to raise false hopes, to risk further disappointment for Victoria. After they parted, Ethan made a decision, a leap of faith fueled by love and a desperate desire to ease Victoria's pain. He went straight to the prison, determined to speak with both her father and the warden. When Joe saw Ethan, his face lit up with a rare, genuine smile. Take care of my girl, Ethan, Joe said, his voice gruff but filled with paternal affection. She deserves someone much better than an old man like me. Ethan carefully laid out his audacious idea, a wedding within the prison walls. Joe hesitated, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. But eventually, he agreed, a flicker of hope igniting within him. If Ethan could convince the warden... The warden listened patiently, his expression skeptical, his gaze unwavering. You're asking to hold a wedding inside the prison, Mr. Davis, just so her father can be there? Yes, sir, Ethan replied, his voice firm, unwavering. She hasn't seen him in almost 15 years. He's terminally ill. We would only need an hour in the chapel. After a long, tense pause, the warden reluctantly agreed,
his voice laced with caution, under strict conditions. Ethan hurried back to Victoria's office, his heart pounding with anticipation, to share the improbable good news. Victoria's reaction was everything he had hoped for, tears of pure, unadulterated joy welling up in her eyes.
"I love you, Ethan," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "More than anything." They went to the bank together, Victoria's hand trembling as she opened a safe deposit box, a legacy left by her father. Inside, she found a letter, her mother's delicate wedding ring, and bonds, enough to pay for the small, intimate prison wedding they were now planning. The moment was bittersweet, a poignant blend of happiness and profound sadness. Emily and Rick's relationship imploded as quickly as it had ignited. Rick caught her in bed with Olivia and Jason, a tableau of betrayal mirroring Ethan's own nightmare. After Rick moved out, heartbroken and disillusioned, he reached out to Ethan, a surprising act of solidarity. Rick told Ethan everything, the disturbing details of Emily's increasingly erratic behavior, how she had been bringing her sister and Jason into the apartment where Liam and Ava lived, engaging in reckless, destructive affairs. Rick also gave Ethan photos, graphic evidence of Emily's inappropriate behavior, evidence Ethan desperately needed for the looming custody battle. The trial dragged on for 4 agonizing months. In the end, the truth prevailed. Emily lost custody of Liam and Ava, visitation rights granted only under the supervised presence of Ethan or his wife, Victoria. "My dear friend," a voice boomed, pulling me back from the digital abyss, the final words of the story still echoing in my mind. "The first story has come to an end, and the next story about adultery awaits you. Let's go." I sighed, the weight of the fictional betrayals heavy on my chest. "I don't know where to begin," I mumbled, feeling emotionally drained, utterly devastated. "On top of that," I continued, running a hand through my hair, "I'm not even sure writing this down will change anything, but this," I gestured vaguely around the room, "this is my reality.